I'm here with the nominees for Outstanding Achievement in Animation. Welcome to the 24th Annual D.I.C.E Awards Developer Discussions. We are here and super fortunate to bring this group together of nominees so that we can, for the first time ever, have them all hang out and talk about the work that they do. Before we do that, let's start with some introductions. From Final Fantasy VII Remake, Soma-san, how are you doing today?
スクエア・エニックスの相馬です。アニメーションディレクターをやってます。とても元気です。
I'm doing really well. My name is Soma Yoshiyuki. I am the animation director from Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Awesome. Can you please give the folks at home a little bit of information about yourself as well?
ファイナルファンタジー7リメイクの中で、アニメーション、パートのディレクションをしています。主に、キャラクターアニメーションの、チェックだとか、監修あたりをやってます。
Yes, let me tell you a little bit about what I did on the title. I am the animation director, so I had supervised the different character animations as well as reviewing many of the assets that were used in game.
Next up, we have from The Last of Us 2, we have Jeremy Yates and Almudena Soria Sancho. How are you both doing today?
We're good.
Good.
Awesome. Jeremy, give us a little bit of info about the work that you've done in this space as well.
Well, I'm Jeremy Yates. I'm the animation director at Naughty Dog. I've been here for about 19 years. And on Last of Us Part 2, I co-led with Almudena, the interactive teams. And we basically oversee anything interactive that moves in the game. So we have a number of different disciplines that we work with, from gameplay to what we call our in-game cinematics. So we kind of cover across that board.
Almudena, can you share a little bit of your information as well for the folks at home?
Yeah, my name is Almudena Soria, and I'm a lead animator at Naughty Dog. We co-led The Last of Us Part 2, and exactly what Jeremy said. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and it's my passion.
Well, thank you so much for being here, both of you. Excited to chat in a second. From Miles Morales, we have James Ham. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Excited to talk to you. Give the folks at home a little info about the work you've done in this space as well.
So my name is James Ham. I was a senior animator on Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. And a lot of the things I did on the project was bringing Miles to life through traversal and combat, as well as some of the mission cinematics and helping lead that team to bring the character of Miles to life.
Perfect. Excited to talk to you as well. And from Ori and the Will of the Wisps, we have Jim Donovan. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to talk to you about the work you've been doing and give the folks at home a little info about the work you've done in this space as well.
Yeah, totally. I've been working on Ori and the Will of the Wisp I started like 3.5 years ago as the cinematic lead. And unfortunately, Warren Goff isn't here. He was the gameplay lead, but we led a very small team, small group of animators, and kind of helped out each other. I did some gameplay. He's done some cinematics. It's been a really exciting project, and we're super proud with how it turned out.
Super cool. And to round out our group, we have from Spiritfarer, Alexander Boyer. How are you doing, Alexander?
Doing good. It's very nice to meet all of you.
Thank you so much for being here. Give the folks at home a little info about yourself as well.
Yes, I'm Alexandre Boyer, animation director on Spiritfarer, along with the two others animators, Simon Nakauchi-Pelletier and Mathieu Choquet. We did all the animation on Spiritfarer, and it was the most enjoyable and meaningful project that I had the chance to work on. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, super excited to have you all here and to talk about all the wonderful games for our category today. The first question is going to be an open-ended one for all of you to kind of jump in on. Each of the titles nominated here are so unique and accomplished in terms of the animation. I'd like for each of you to tell me a little bit about how you developed and landed on the style of animation that makes your game unique. I'll first ask that of Soma-san.
はい。まず僕からですかね。
はい、お願いします。
はい。そうですね。FF7 リメイクっていうのが一番大きく違う、他の作品と違うところが、やっぱりオリジナルのリメイクだっていうところで、 で、しかもそのオリジナルのリメイクが、オリジナル作品っていうのがものすごい、根強いファンが多くて、その、ですかね、20年以上前の作品なのに、いまだにその世界が、なんかみんなの中にこう根付いているというか、そういうところがまず、前提として、出発点として大きく違うところ、だったんですけれども、これなんか一気に喋っちゃって大丈夫ですかね。
はい。
全部。はい。で、そこを前提とした中で、今回新しく作品を作る上で、やっぱり普通に作っても、まあ今の現状のその作品として新しい作品として作れるとは思うんですけど、その当時のそのファンの方のプレイした驚きだとか、その新鮮さっていうのを表現する上で、まあそこ、まあ、昔の要素を残しつつ、だけどそれのただの焼き直しではなく、さらに新しい感動とかっていうのを与えられるように、上書いていくっていう、その辺がちょっと特徴的かなと思います。
So, what is really different with Final Fantasy Remake is that we have an original piece of work that we are remaking. And with this original source material that we were working on, already has an established fan, a lot of fans that have a very strong affinity to the original work. Now, this title that we originated from was over 20 years old, but there are still a lot of passionate fans. So that was our sort of starting point on the project itself. And with that being our sort of prerequisite, but still, of course, we could have made this a completely brand new title and still provide that sort of new feeling. But we still wanted to be mindful of the fans of the time and still bring that sort of surprise and the freshness to them as well. So our goal was to retain what was really good of the original source material and not being just a straight up reprinting of it, but still bring an element that is new and refreshing and something that is moving to our players as well. So I think that's what sets us apart in the way we tried to approach the animation.
Thank you so much, Son, for your answer. I appreciate that. Jeremy and Almudena, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well about, how the kind of animation style has come across for all of you with Last of Us 2 as well.
Sure. I mean, with Last of Us 2, we really kind of a goal that we had is to really push the realism and the believability of the characters. Previous titles like Uncharted was much more kind of big and over the top, and Last of Us was a lot more about character and about really kind of exploring kind of deep emotions. And so for us, really kind of pushing the groundedness and the realism of the animation was a big goal that we had. And realistic animation, especially realistic interactive animation, presents kind of all new challenges. Everything is exponentially harder, at least in our experience. When something's not perfect, it's more noticeable, it stands out. And so it just presents just incredible challenges to just, really kind of like work out all these details in areas that like probably are completely overlooked by the audience. They don't even realize how much work went into making it so that you don't notice it. And so that's something that was a big part of the style. And there's so many, there's so much kind of work that went behind kind of following that.
Almudena, do you have anything to share to that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also like that style benefits the story, like to just make the players immerse and make sure they identify with the characters they're playing. But it also creates a huge challenge with design where like you have all these grounded animations, all the realistic style, but you still have to marry it with like the design and the responsiveness. So with that, we have to come up with so many new systems to achieve that, where board frames or making it shorter and faster would just cut it. It was more like, okay, let's just develop weapon manipulation would be this example where you unholster a weapon while holstering another one, just making sure everything is responsive, but grounded and believable. The new facial system we developed as well, just to create infinite almost emotions per line that was tagged manually. AI trying to look more smart. That just it's just a lot of assets, a lot of animation, but also needs to be authored, like Jeremy was saying, like in a very particular way, so it doesn't stand out as not grounded.
I love hearing that, the way you all kind of incorporated that together. That makes a lot of sense of hearing how the systems kind of talk to each other in that way. James, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this too. Miles has a very unique style that he brings to the table for multiple reasons. I'd love to hear, some of your thoughts about, what were some of the kind of very unique and special things you kind of did for his character.
So when bringing Miles to life, we already had this established world from the first Marvel Spider-Man, and you got to see Pete kind of swing around the city. And starting from that, we wanted to make sure that Miles felt authentic and felt different from Peter. And bringing in this character that isn't as experienced just creates a new style of animation that a lot of times we don't see in games, where the character feels inexperienced, and through his actions, through gameplay, and through cinematics, you can feel the sense of him trying to learn as he goes and feeling the insecurities, whether he's doing a venom punch and he has the reaction that it affects him, it hurts his hand when he does these things. And from the swinging with him being able to express himself with the amount of tricks that he does, we wanted that to be an extension of the player. As they're learning who Miles is, they're also learning themselves how to express themselves through swinging and how to express themselves through combat, and really bring a moment of joy in such a hard year. I felt like was really important for Miles to have people be able to get some freedom in a game, and in a way that a lot of people feel like they are the hero, they are this character, and they really truly put themselves into this character that feels like he's doing the right thing, but also going on this journey to learn who he is as a hero and learning who he is as Miles, the character.
Yeah, it feels like all of that came through really, really well in kind of some of the even small, idle animations that you put in for him in the game. It felt like you're really kind of pulling the flavor of him and New York together to do that really, really well, which I thought was fantastic. Jim, I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well about this and how you kind of incorporated, that into Ori. Ori has this very, very unique style to it, and you even have to be kind of more intricate in the way you do it because of the size of Ori on screen in some ways. I'd love to hear your thoughts about, how you kind of have, plucked in and put in some fantastic animation thought behind, how you want that character to animate.
I really need to give a shout out to James Benson, who was the animator on the original Ori and really helped kind of define the style and like give us a baseline to work from. We really try to push like the squash and stretch throughout the game, and squash and stretch isn't something that you see in a lot of video games, and I think part of that is because it's really difficult to do, because you need to be able to, you want the game to feel responsive, and you want to be able to have smooth blends and transitions, and if the character's in like a crazy stretch pose, it's complicated to do. But I think Ori as a character is like a really good design for that, because it's a simple design. It's kind of like a big head, pear-shaped body, long ears, long tail, and it's got springy legs. So even though it's a small character on screen with these springy legs and the ability to scale the rig, we can really get some dynamic poses and some really good squash and stretch out of them. And then also having like tons of overlapping action in the ears and tails. And our mentality, like our philosophy there, is really to think of the characters, like really think of the shape of Ori, like rather than like, don't think so much about the form, but it's almost like a motion graphics mentality. Like this is a character that can pop up into the air and turn into a little ball and spin around and then like slam on the ground and turn into a pancake and bounce back up. And I think just having that approach where like just go for cool, exaggerated timing and spacing and go for like big exaggerated poses, and just kind of started with Ori and just carry that across our NPCs and bosses and all that stuff.
Alexander, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. I think that there are very, very special parts of Spiritfarer that come across because of the animation. I'd love to hear, philosophy of how you all kind of got to that point.
Yeah, well, Spiritfarer is a special project because on the surface, it's very colorful and cartoony, but the theme underneath it is more serious. So we had to find the right balance in like doing the same thing with the animation where we can be really snappy and over the top, but also be able to communicate the more subtle expressions and the emotions that we wanted to convey to the players.
Awesome. I love that. Soma-san, I'd love to ask you, it's often a difficult task to recreate such a beloved character and a beloved cast for, new fans. What challenges did you and the team face bringing Cloud and Company to life for this newer generation?
そうですね。まずやっぱりオリジナルがその PS プレイステーション1の最初の本当に今見るとすごいなんですかね、まだまだ表現力が乏しいというかものになってしまうんですけど、そこでやった時のそのなんですかね、ファンたちがそのプレイした時のその新鮮味っていうのは、今でこそ絵的には古いものかもしれないですけど、ものすごいものがあったと思うんですね。でそれがさらにこの20年経った中で、その思い出っていうのがすごいいい方向に増幅されてる中でのその、新しい作品っていうところで、昔のその特徴っていうのを、クラブたちの動きっていうのを参考にもしつつ、そのままだとやっぱりなんですかね、新しい新鮮さっていうのはないと思うんで、今回の今の現代の表現の中で、さらにその、新鮮な驚きっていうのを加えるためにちょっと、目指したところとしては、すごいフォトリアルな完全なフォトリアルではなくて、ちょっとリアルな頭身だしリアルなキャラクターなんだけれども、どちらかというとその完全なリアルではなく、若干アニメ的な要素というか、なんですかね、言葉の表現があれですけど、2.5 次元というか 2.8 次元みたいな、なんかその辺の完全リアルではないその手前の部分のその昔のイメージとそのリアルさっていうのを融合した、するっていうところで特徴づけるようにはしてました。ちょっと回答がちょっと変な感じになっちゃいましたけど。
So, of course, with the original title being on PlayStation 1, at the time, the graphical depiction, of course, was not up to par compared to what we can see in modern graphics nowadays. But I believe that the fans who played the original title still had that sort of new discovery when they played the game, and they were of course, moved when they played the original title. And so, of course, the picture itself that we were working with may have been a bit old. People still had a very strong impression of the characters that they played with, even after 20 years since the original. And perhaps some people have had like their memories sort of ingrained in their minds, and kind of grew from there to a more beautiful sort of recollection of what they had played in the past. So we wanted to make sure that we referenced how these characters looked originally. And of course, if we use them as is, it wouldn't provide the sort of new kind of refreshing feeling. So we tried to bring that to our more modern standards in how we draw these characters and provide that sort of new kind of surprise element to our players. So we tried to aim for not fully photorealistic, but of course they are more realistic compared to the original in their sort of proportions as well as how the characters are depicted. But we went for a slightly more anime kind of look. If photorealism is considered 3.0, this would be like 2.5 or 2.8, like almost there, but not quite fully completely photorealistic. Kind of merging that sort of original look with a more grounded, real kind of look. So I hope that answers your question.
No, thank you. That totally answered the question for sure. I'm curious, Jeremy, I'd love to even kind of piggyback off of that answer and talk about the kind of evolution of a character's animation design. You know, from the first game, you know, there was a kind of core set of things that these characters were kind of able to do. You know, how does evolution kind of work when it comes to, you know, running from, you know, the first game in a series to the sequel? Do you feel like you're kind of starting from scratch, or are you kind of looking back at the first game for inspiration and then building off of that to kind of find out where the good spaces can be for new and innovative ways to kind of, you know, bring that character to life?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's to follow up a sequel and a sequel that had such a big fan base. It's such a challenge to figure out like where you can completely change things and where you really need to kind of stick with what the fans really loved about it. For the animation specifically, you know, what the industry is constantly evolving, and we're constantly learning new things and learning new techniques in how we can do this. And you know, we see improvements vastly in character model and poly count and lighting and everything. Like everything around the animation is constantly growing and becoming more and more realistic. And so it's important for the animation to continue to evolve to work with it. Otherwise, you know, again, it stands out. So everything gets exponentially more difficult and more detailed, in a sense. You know, just a small example, in Last of Us 1, Joel is kind of scavenging is a huge thing, and you know, and opening drawers and cabinets and all that kind of stuff was just kind of a part of the gameplay, and you could achieve that with a small number of animations before, where we would just kind of line the character up to the environment and play an animation, wait for it to exit, and then you kind of go out. But our animators on this project wanted to kind of take that to a new level and give even more control over the character so that it feels, so you never feel kind of locked in. And so just a simple act of opening a drawer or cabinet took hundreds of animations to do, to just get every angle and to just get it so that you never feel locked in, and that you feel completely natural, just kind of like walk past, grab something, line up with everything so that you don't have like these Jedi things, you know, snapping to the hands. Like, so just everything kind of like, like works the way that you would expect it to and flow the way you expect it to. But it's one of those things that it's just like, it's so hard when you're playing to fully appreciate what went into it. It just feels right. And, you know, that's kind of the reward for us, is like the main goal. And Almudena kind of talked about this too, is that we had these 2-part goals of, one, to make it look realistic, but to not in any way compromise how it feels. Those 2 things are like opposing problems, and they make it exponentially harder to do both at once. And so that was kind of a huge challenge for us.
Yeah, it sounds like the balance of trying to, you know, continue to have that nuanced kind of small ticks that wind up happening within the body kind of be represented, you know, visually enough so that the player can kind of pick up on that. was super important. Was it, you know, and I'm sure that was all extremely challenging to be able to do that. You know, what are some of the kind of parts that you're most proud of when it comes to that part, Jeremy? And then I'll ask Almudena to kind of, you know,
Sure.
bookend that as well.
I mean, there's, you know, you could look at every single little thing, and there's a story behind each one of them. A huge change for us in the studio was to embrace motion matching, and that's been this thing that's just been kind of starting in the industry, and just kind of a, you know, quick rundown of what it is it's this completely different way of triggering animation in game, and it automatically pieces together bits of animation from this big pool of animation data, and what you get is this very natural looking motion where the character, like each foot plants and pivots in this way that we'd never seen before in games. And that was definitely something that we of course wanted to do and try. And it probably should have came with this giant warning label of how difficult it would be to do this. We got the system up and running within a few months and got characters moving in the game. And we thought, like, okay, we have a basic idea of how this works, but to be able to, it requires that, like, you harness all of this animation data and these systems to work in a way that works the way that you would predict it. And to solve some of the bugs and pops and little glitches and things that you would have. And again, any single one of those things kind of ruin the whole experience. Like they make the animation stand out. And so we really had to kind of like refine all those. And that process went from 3 months of development to like 2 years with our top people really working on trying to solve this problem for our studio. And now, after kind of going through that journey and after developing tools for our animators and really just developing a better understanding of how it works, like all the tech that went behind it, like now we finally feel like we kind of understand it, and, you know, it'll be easier to do it moving forward. But getting there was a huge journey for us.
Well, then I'd love to hear really quickly, you know, what was one of the things you were kind of most proud of that you were able to kind of accomplish?
Yeah, first of all, just being able to finish it. That was a big accomplishment. The second one is like how proud I am of seeing the challenge of like realistic and responsive being achieved. And one proof of that is like when you see some videos online of like what people are able to do, like throw a bottle, pick up a bottle while running, then I like stun the enemy, mid-shield, clicker guns, and like get them out of the hands. Like things that we've never thought people could do is just amazing. So that kind of makes me really proud of, you know, we made this grounded game with this grounded animation, realistic, but people like gamers are really having fun with it and exploring all that. So that's kind of one of my main takes. The animation served the purpose of the story and the gameplay at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. James, I'm curious, you kind of touched on it a little bit before about the, you know, telling the story of Miles through his animation and his web swinging and kind of showing his novice ability kind of coming through. I very much remember, you know, one of the first animations that I saw that really kind of blew me away was him swinging and then flailing through the air, not knowing where he was going to kind of go. You know, talk a little bit really quickly about, you know, how you kind of achieved those parts of it, kind of, you know, linking those things together to make that character feel both, you know, super powerful, but also, you know, showing that he was kind of learning how to use his powers.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the first things that we wanted to tackle with starting this and making sure that he felt different from Peter, because in the world, Peter's really experienced, you know, from the first game. And with Miles, with him being fresh into this, we wanted something to show that he's new, but he wants to throw his body out there. And we took a lot of our personal experiences of doing parkour and filming ourselves and looking at inspiration from indoor skydiving, even just to get a feel for how is Miles going to feel throughout all of this. And one of the things that we really wanted to push for Miles was the feeling of get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that was kind of the starting point for him being able to fall in his reverse style, where he's in this awkward position, but finding a way for him to swing out of it. How would that look? How would that feel? And with that, more problems arose, and trying to find transitions out of everything, trying to find transitions if you are swinging, if you press X, if you want to go fight someone, how does he get out of this awkward position that he's in? And he finds his own way to do that. And I think we created so many transitions between that. And then when it came to tricks, it was the same thing of creating this free flowing way to have tricks from the last game, where in the last game, it felt like I think we had like 6 tricks or so, to now upping it to 30 tricks. And then also having each trick have custom swings out of them to really express yourself. That way it feels like it's a continuous flow throughout the traversal, throughout going from trick to swing to trick and back and forth, as well as other characters, introducing Haley, who was our ASL character, and bringing that to life and seeing that representation in that, seeing how Miles communicates with her and the fact that he knows it. It just felt like we were showing not only through storytelling, narratively, but also through the animation, how we can show different representations for ASL and for people of color, and show an authenticity to it, where Miles has this little pep in his step, and he may not be used to doing things a certain way, but through kind of throwing himself out there and giving it a chance, he kind of finds himself in all of the animations. And we did that for the finishers, where you may see him kick somebody, and instead of landing on his feet, he falls and he gets back up, and it shows that determination that he has, but it also still shows that inexperience that comes along with it. And like just building on that and having in our mind a lot of the times was, we've seen Spider-Man do these actions plenty of times. There's so many forms of media where we've seen Spider-Man use his webs and jump super high and stuff, but then adding that extra layer of how would Miles go about doing this action, and then how would he get out of this action? It just added the extra layer to bring personality to every action that you see him do in the game, as well as show his personality throughout these actions.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that as well. Alexander, I'd love to ask you really quickly, Spiritfarer has this kind of gorgeous animation style that feels, fairly reminiscent, or very reminiscent of even Studio Ghibli, and other animated works in that space. Could you talk a little bit about the studio's inspirations on kind of how that kind of affected the game and how that kind of infused itself within it?
Yes, well, in terms of animation, we try to go with what comes to us naturally. And that is informed by so many things that inspired us throughout the years, like Ghibli, of course. A lot of movies, comics, video games, both 3D and 2D. If we're speaking about the process through which we make our animations, although we do some traditional frame-by-frame animation, we also use tools like 2D rigs and deformers to help our animation production. In that sense, we're more inspired by TV shows like Hilda on Netflix than classical 2D animated works like Ghibli and Disney used to do.
That's fantastic. That's a great poll to be able to remember that show and see that was a connected part for you. Jim, I'm curious about your animation style, especially about how does it kind of start? Does it start in service of the story? Does it kind of already come from parts of the overall visual approach? I'd love to hear a little bit about the creative process and how you have all gone about the animation there.
Yeah, I think it starts in service of the story for sure. There's definitely a certain tone that we're trying to achieve, and I think like the essence of being an animator is like having an emotional change for like the viewer, whether it's a film or a video game, and it might be as simple as like making someone laugh or giggle, or making someone cry would be like the ultimate achievement, because it's to take something that's nothing and actually like make someone feel something when they're watching it, I think is a big accomplishment. And I think with Ori, like there is this sad tone. There's happy moments. It's kind of this fairy tale, like magical world, this fantasy world. But there's also some really dark, like sinister tones. And like people play this game and they actually cry. Like I've animated some messed up stuff in that game for being such like a such a happy little world. So I think it starts with the story, and you just kind of you go for this, the theme itself is pretty dark, and the animation kind of builds on that, like from a cinematic viewpoint anyways. Like it starts off where things are happy and bouncy and everyone's like friendly and hugging and things like that, and then without spoilers, there's some twists in the game where you find out like some darker things are happening. I think it definitely starts from story. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that answer. Super thoughtful on your end for that as well. Now is the best time of the conversation where I get to give away our D.I.C.E award. Again, thank you all for being a part of this and for spending some time with us today. Our D.I.C.E award for the outstanding achievement in animation for this year goes to The Last of Us 2. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations. Awesome.
Thank you.
Congrats, guys.
Just to point out, it's just an extraordinary honor to be recognized by our peers. This award means just a special amount because of that. It's, just all of our fellow nominees, you guys are incredible. We're huge fans of your work. Making games is hard. I think we all, in our own way, in all our own styles, like really understand that. And none of it would be possible without the passion and dedication of so many different people. And for us, our co-presidents, Evan Wells and Neil Druckmann, the trust that you've given us, the opportunity you give us to push boundaries is so appreciated. My co-pilots, Almudena, Eric, McCall, I couldn't ask for better partners. And to our animation team at Naughty Dog and VASG, who poured their heart into every single frame, like it's so appreciated. And just our whole studio, our engineers, designers, character teams that all work together to just allow us to do this kind of thing. Our dedicated team of actors and athletes who gave us 100% every single take. We so appreciate you. And to our Last of Us community who have our back and encourage us along the way and afterwards, you're who we do all this for. And you give us the fuel to never rest on our laurels and to always try and figure out a way to make things better. And most of all, to our loved ones who provide support and encouragement to us every step of the way. So thank you.
Again, thank you, all of you, for being here. All of you have put in so much time and work into this space to make the games that you have made so great. So again, thank you for being here. And hopefully we get to do this in person at some point very, very soon. That would be awesome.